The Akron Zips have become one of the most consistent programs in college basketball over the last 20 years. Since 2006, the Zips have finished with just less than 20 wins 3 times. One of which was a COVID-shortened season in 2020-2021, where they still finished 15-8 on the season. Last year, head coach Sean Groce led the Zips to their best record in program history as they finished 28-7 overall and a whopping 17-1 in the MAC. Led by two Johnsons and Tavari and Nate, Akron emerged as one of the best offensive teams in the country. They finished the season with a remarkable 54.9% effective field goal percentage, which was 34th in the country. They were 50th in three-point percentage, 41st in two-point percentage, and 71st overall in offensive efficiency. With some notable departures from the roster, Groce has managed to bring back some key players in an era that continues to be ever so difficult for non-power conference programs to retain talent. While Akron does feature a strong NIL backing, especially for a conference like the MAC, it's hard to return the likes of Tavari Johnson and others. So let's go ahead and take a look at what Groce has in store for the Akron Zips in the 2025-2026 season. The Zips are going to be without 5 of their players from last season. Most notably is Nate Johnson. Nate Johnson averaged 14 points, 4.9 rebounds, 3.4 assists, and 1.7 assists per game. He entered the transfer portal after having committed to returning back to Akron. So there was this whole debacle last year with a couple of players who said they were going to stay at Akron and then, not really tampering, kind of tampering, but, people are coming and starting to whisper in their ears and saying like, hey, you can make a couple mil if you transfer in somewhere else to a power conference. And while there's been no confirmation if that's what exactly happened here, but Nate Johnson conveniently entered the portal and within a week committed to Kansas State. So you can just decide for yourself whether or not you think that was tampering or not. Anyway, so Nate Johnson was obviously a terrific player. It's a really tough break for them. He shot 43.9% overall from the floor. He shot 30.1% from beyond the arc. He had a remarkable 28.1% assist rate, which was 105th in the country. So really just this guy does have NBA potential. There's not a single doubt in my mind about that whatsoever. So obviously that's going to be a big, painful loss for Akron this season, especially when he toyed with fans in the sense of saying he's going to come back and then he doesn't come back. Another player that entered the portal out of Akron last season was James Okonkwo, who is now headed to Utah. He averaged 6.9 points, 7.2 rebounds, and 1 block per game. He spent 2 seasons at West Virginia, then North Carolina, and last year with Akron, so this guy is now at his 4th school. But he shot 59.3% overall from the floor. He was a monster on the glass, obviously. He averaged 7.2 rebounds in just 18 minutes per game. I mean, that's freaking insane on the rebounding percentages here. In 7.2 of those were offensive, so this guy was absolutely cleaning up the boards regardless whenever he's in the game. So anytime you're losing a player like this, it obviously is going to hurt because you need to be able to have that talent down in the paint. But nonetheless, we'll get to who Groce has gotten in to replace. Also lost Josiah Harris, who is headed to Cleveland State. He averaged 8.7 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 2 assists per game last season. He also spent 2 seasons with West Virginia before transferring into Akron. He was a 6'7" senior last year, and the problem is he only appeared in 6 games before he went down with an injury. So, it's going to be kind of one of those big what-if moments in terms of what could have been, because he obviously was having a very solid season before he went down with the injury. So really, Akron fans are just never going to know what he could have truly contributed to this team if he had maintained a healthy season. Last but not least, we have 2 seniors who ran out of eligibility in Seth Wilson and Isaiah Gray. Seth Wilson averaged 6.3 points, 1.9 rebounds, 1.1 assists, and Isaiah Gray averaged 9.6 points, 4.6 rebounds, 2.4 assists, and 1.1 steals. These are 2 seniors who both contributed to the Zips over the course of their careers, and really just it's one of those things where you're losing that leadership, you're losing the people who have been there, who know the Groce system. However, in this new era, it's been no big deal for Groce to be able to go find players to replace these guys. However, I will say that the Zips fans, especially somebody like Isaiah Gray, he emerged as really a true fan favorite. So they both in their careers kind of on that high note. The Zips made the NCAA Tournament last year as a 13 seed. It actually gave a team a run for money in the first round of the NCAA Tournament. So, you kind of go out on that high point, and congratulations to both them on prolific college basketball careers. All right, so let's start diving into the players that are coming back from last season's roster, and most notably, Tavari Johnson is returning for the Akron Zips this season. He averaged 13 points, 1.9 rebounds, and 3.8 assists per game. He Really did stick to his word here. So I mentioned the whole debacle with Nate Johnson saying he's staying at Akron, entering the portal, going to Kansas State. Actually, Tavari Johnson technically did the same thing. He said he was going to stay, and then all of a sudden he entered the transfer portal. The difference is he committed, stayed to his word, and decided to still remain at Akron despite entering the portal. So he is going to probably be the most instrumental piece on this team this season. Obviously, with Nate Johnson gone, that opens up an even larger void. So Tavari's going to be able to step in. And again, I think Tavari is definitely professional level talent. So he's going to be huge for the Zips this year. And I think this is going to be the year that he really just busts onto the scene in terms of like people who follow non-power conference, mid-major college basketball know who he is. But when I'm talking about busting on the scene, I'm talking about more national media starting to pick him up, and the more casual college basketball fan starting to realize like, oh, this guy is legitimate. So looking at his metrics from last season, he shot 39.9% from a 3-point, which is absolutely insane. You love to see that. He shot an even 50% overall. He finished with a 28.3% assist rate, and it went even better in the MAC when that got to over 30% in an assist rate. So this guy is not just an offensive weapon, he's an elite point guard who can handle the ball and lead an offense as sort of a floor general in a sense for the Zips on this one. So obviously Zips fans got to be pumped about this one. I'm pumped about this one for Akron. I cannot wait to see what he can do this season. Seamus Scott is also returning. He's a senior. He averaged 9.4 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 2.7 assists per game. He shot 45% from the floor last year, 38.7% from beyond the arc. He spent the last 2 seasons with Akron where he's continuously improved each year that he's been with the team. He's a 6'2 guard, and he can really serve as kind of that secondary ball handler. So you're going to probably imagine that you have Johnson, you got Scott in that starting lineup, kind of playing that 1-2 spot there, because he is a pretty good offensive player, but he also can handle the ball because he averaged this season with a 19.2% assist rate in the MAC, which put him 15th in the conference. He was lights out shooting from deep as well in the MAC. He shot 42.9% from beyond the arc, which was 3rd best in the MAC. He also played some really strong on-ball defense as he improved over the course of the season. Over his last 6 games in conference, he averaged 1.5 steals per game. So this is the type of guard that is going to be able to play not just an offensive game, he's going to be able to serve as a secondary ball handler to Johnson, he's going to be able to serve as a solid defender. So he kind of is that glue guy package, in my opinion. So like really look for him to take yet another step forward. Because again, Nate Johnson's leaving a big void, so there's going to need to be a couple guys step up. You already have Tavari Johnson. I think Scott could be another type of guy to come in and kind of help fill that void. Amani Lyles is also returning from the roster last season. He averaged 7.6 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 2 assists per game, on top of a very solid 1.2 blocks per game. So this is kind of a big defensive player coming back. He's also super efficient on the offensive side. He averaged 56.8% overall from the floor and 31.7% from beyond the arc on roughly about 2 attempts per game. So he can kind of flex out. He plays a great defense on the interior. He is super efficient inside, but then also he's got that ability to flex out as a kind of more of a NBA style forward, rather than necessarily just a traditional big man who only plays inside and doesn't take 3-point shots. So really nice production out of this in what was just 18 minutes per game on average here. So really solid. I think he's the type of player that can take a huge step forward coming into this season. Out of the 5.2 rebounds he was averaging, 2 were offensive, so he's really good at crashing the offensive boards here. And inside the arc, he shot 76.9%. That was 1st in the MAC. So, like, really, I mean, again, he's got that ability to flex outside if you need to, but I mean, he's just proficient from inside. So this is the type of guy that's going to take, I think, a huge step forward. Again, they have a little bit of a void down in that center spot, and while he is a little bit undersized for a traditional center, as he's 6'7", he plays far beyond his height. So he plays more, that 6'10", 6'11 kind of size in terms of his game. Super pumped to see how he does this year. I think that he's going to be due to really take on an even larger role, maybe, 22, 25 minutes per game for the Akron Zips this year. Bowen Hardman is also returning for the Zips last season. He averaged 6.6 points and a 1 rebound per game. He appeared in 35 games. He started in just 3 of those, but he played a super important role in the rotation coming off that bench. He shot 43.3% overall and 39.8% from beyond the arc on nearly 5 attempts per game. So this is very much a three-point specialist. He is a sharpshooter. He's the type of guy that's going to give you that offensive spark coming off the bench. He's a 6'3" guard, and he takes most of the threes, 180 shots, in which 166 of those were three-pointers. So he quite literally only took 14 shots that were not three-pointers last year. Honestly, I love that. I love these type of guys. These are the type of guys that probably aren't going to play at a professional level, but they play a very important role in a college basketball team. And as we mentioned, the Akron Zips last year were a super efficient three-point shooting team, and Hardman is a big piece of that coming off the bench. So, again, he's going to probably have that same role this season, but he's going to be that 6th, 7th guy off the bench, and he's going to be able to provide you with offensive weapons when somebody like Tavari Johnson, Seamus Scott's on the bench, maybe getting some resting minutes. So super important guy. This is a huge returning piece for the Zips this season. Another player the Akron Zips have returning this season is the budding star in Sharron Young. Sharron Young averaged 7.4 points, 1.9 rebounds, 1.7 assists, and 1 steal per game as a freshman. That was good enough to earn him honors on the All-MAC freshman team last season. He appeared in 35 games. He averaged 16 minutes per game. He shot 46% from the floor and 39.8% from three-point. And that was on about 3.2 attempts per game, so overall pretty solid three-point shooter. He is super sharp from the free throw line. He shot 81.6%. He flashed a lot of good signs about some future ball handling capabilities in there and defensive skills. He finished the season with a 1.7 to 1.2 assist to turnover ratio. He's a 6-foot guard, and his 18.5% assist rate in conference play was 17th best in the MAC. So we know they already have some guard play available in terms of point guards, but I think you can see Sharron Young kind of taking on a little bit of a higher role in running the offense this season, in anticipation that he can take over that role full-time moving forward as well, as long as they're able to retain him, of course, season over season. But what I love about him is his offensive capabilities. His nearly 40% three-point shooting percentage within conference play was 6th best in the MAC. This is as a freshman. And he's only averaging 16 minutes per game last year, and he's already jacking up 3.2 attempts per game from beyond the arc. He's knocking down almost 40% of those. He is knocking down 40% of those in the conference, essentially. So, number one, great offensive player. Number two, he's very solid on the defensive end, especially with his on-ball defense. And number three, he can handle that ball handling role when you don't need him to be the main guy. However, you can rely on him whenever others are off the court to help run and facilitate that offense. There's a lot to like here, and especially as a freshman, doing what he did, his ceiling is going to be light years higher than what we just saw last season. So look for him to be a bust-out candidate this year. Last player returning from the team last year that actually appeared in a game is Marvin Musme Kamali. He appeared in 32 games as a freshman, and he started 4 of those while averaging 8.2 minutes per game. He finished the season averaging 1.9 points and 2.5 rebounds while shooting 69% overall. He's not a three-point shooter. Actually, he's kind of an interesting player overall. He's a 6'6 guard, wing forward, kind of that range, but he's not a three-point threat. He didn't take a single three-pointer. So he plays more like a power forward than anything at that 6'6 size. So kind of a really interesting model, I guess, is how I'd say that, because the Akron Zips are very much a three-point shooting team, and you have this guy who doesn't take three-pointers, but he is very strong offensively. He's a slasher. He plays very well in the paint. And this is the type of guy that I think could really surprise some people. There's kind of an opportunity for that on this team, I think, coming into this season. And I think I could see him, he's not going to start, but I could see him taking a little bit larger role coming off the bench, maybe averaging 12, 14 minutes per game coming off that bench, giving them important minutes and kind of playing a little bit of that undersized forward position. And I think he's going to be actually a big cog for this team that people probably on the surface aren't going to realize how much he's contributing. And lastly, they do have 2 more players returning, but both of them redshirt last year. They have Evan Mahaffey and Richard Briscoe. Neither of them played, obviously, last year due to the redshirt, but Akron was Mahaffey's only offer coming out of high school. But Briscoe actually had quite a few nice offers from other high major schools. They had St. Bonaventure, George Washington, Nebraska, TCU, and many more. So this team is pretty small in terms of height, so I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody like Briscoe, who's got a little bit of height on him, be able to absorb some minutes this season. But as I mentioned, I don't know how much that's going to be. He's sitting at 6'8" overall, so I think that he could probably kind of maybe take 8-10 minutes per game, if I had to guess, coming into this year. I think for Mahaffey, it's going to still be really difficult for him to see. He's a traditional guard. I don't foresee him being able to crack the rotation very much coming into this year. It is worth noting as well, they do have 3 walk-ons that are also going to be returning. I don't usually typically do massive breakdowns on these players. However, they have Evan Wilson, who is a guard. They have Zach Halligan, who actually redshirted last year. And then they also have Connor Groce, who also redshirted, which obviously Connor Groce is the son of head coach John Groce. So those 3 guys, you can imagine that they're probably going to see about the same level of production this season, all 3 as walk-ons. Looking at who the Zips have brought in for the season, they have 3 incoming players from the transfer portal, and then they have 3 incoming freshmen. So looking at the players from the portal, they have Evan Mahaffey, who is obviously the brother of Eric, so he's now joining his brother here. He actually is coming out of Ohio State. Last season, he averaged 3.6 points and 3.1 rebounds for the Buckeyes. He started his career out as Penn State, where as a freshman, he actually appeared in 34 games. He averaged 2.8 points and 1.7 rebounds per game. He then transferred to Ohio State. He's been there for the last 2 seasons. Actually, in his sophomore season, he was a little bit better. He appeared in 35 games. And he actually started in 35 games, where he averaged 4.3 points, 4.2 rebounds, 1.7 assists, and 1 steal per game. So not like eye-popping numbers for a guy who quite literally started in 35 games for Ohio State. However, he's very solid defensively, and he plays some solid, he just kind of is like a stat sheet stuffer, in my opinion. He's not the type of guy that's going to blow your mind, but he's the type of guy that is constantly, number one, he's constantly involved in plays. And number two, he's given you a variety of different, he can score, he can rebound, but he's not going to necessarily be that 10, 15 point per game guy or 10 rebound per game guy. And he also plays solid defense. So kind of a little bit of a do-it-all. Last year, obviously, he moved more towards a rotational role. And I will add this, he's not a three-point threat whatsoever. He's just 7 of 31 from deep in his career. And at 6'6", he's, again, kind of like what we were talking about earlier with Eric and some of these other players who are kind of fitting into that 6'6" role. So Marvin Musumi Kamali is a great example here, where he isn't three-point threat whatsoever. He's 6'6", kind of plays more of a forward spot. But this is what we've come to learn that Groce likes in terms of his players. He plays very small lineups. And that's totally okay. He's not going to have a traditional 7-foot center ever, I don't think, because he's the head coach of a team, which is totally fine. But he likes these guys who are more of that 6'6", kind of 6'7" range, where they are undersized but play beyond their height in terms of positions. And this is another type of guy. I think that he is going to be a nice player here. I think he's going to play a very important role. I'll be curious to see whether or not he starts versus coming off the bench in more of a larger rotational role. I could see an argument for both sides, but we'll just keep an eye on that as the season starts. Another player coming in from the transfer portal is Chabi Bare out of Duquesne. He averaged 4.1 points and 3.5 rebounds per game last year. He shot a ridiculous 72.5% from the floor. He appeared in just 18 games. But in those 18 games, he still actually averaged 1.2 blocks per game. He finished with a strong 12.7% blocking percentage, a 20.6% defensive rebounding percentage, and a 16% offensive rebounding percentage. Very, very good on the glass. Very, very good from inside the paint. He's 6'9". He's going to probably play more of that really traditional center role. Again, I kind of just previously mentioned that Groce likes a little bit undersized players. He likes running smaller. So even at 6'9", he's going to play more of that traditional center role, where he's going to be a menace down in the paint. He's going to be able to block defenders. He's going to be able to clean up the boards. So multiple guys like this in this lineup, but I'm really excited because I think he's going to be able to help them a lot with the departure of somebody like Okonokwo, who is now no longer on the team. So he's going to be able to kind of fill in some of the voided minutes there. The last incoming piece from the portal that I personally like and I think is hugely underrated is Cody Head. So Cody Head is coming out of Arkansas State. He averages 2.5 points and 0.8 assists per game last season. I don't want you to look at those numbers too much, because Arkansas State was a very good team last year, and he took a really large step back in terms of contributions. He's a 6'2 guard, and he spent his freshman season at Lipscomb, where he was much, much better. And this is a Lipscomb Bison team that was very solid underneath Lenny Acuff. And he averaged 8.1 points, 2.5 rebounds, while shooting 53.2% from the floor and 35.2% from beyond the arc on about 1.7 attempts per game. He just didn't see the same role last year, and that really hurt his metrics. And I think on the surface, people are going to be like, well, what are we going to get out of him here from Arkansas? But I think that this is an underrated pickup, because if he could kind of replicate what he was doing at Lipscomb there in that freshman season, I think that he's going to be able to take a huge step forward in his junior season, get back into the groove of playing those more expanded roles. During that freshman season, he shot 57.7% from inside the arc. He was 318th in the country. He featured an 11.6% turnover rate while finishing with a 5.9% assist rate. So, not necessarily a ball handler for a 6'2 guard. Totally fine. You don't need that. You got multiple guys. You got Young. You got Johnson. You got Scott. Like multiple guys here who can kind of play that ball handler. You don't need Head to be that type of guy. You need Head to play more of, again, underside combo guard role for this guy, to where he can either A, come off the bench in significant amount of minutes, or B, even slide into that starting rotation and be able to provide an offensive spark. Into the 3 incoming freshmen they have Josh Henderson, who is a 6'4 shooting guard coming out of Westerville, Ohio. He had a ton of options, including Marshall, Eastern Kentucky, Youngstown State, Xavier, Bowling Green, Ohio, and more. So a lot from this kind of area in terms of the region of where he's from, but he's a prolific scorer. I'll link some of his highlights down in the description below, but he led his team to their first district title since 2021 after dropping 35 points on a ridiculous 13 of 14 shooting performance. I think he's going to be able to provide the Zips with an offensive spark. One thing that I've noticed about Groce is, unless you are a star freshman or a potential star freshman, like we saw with Young last year, he might end up redshirting some of these guys. I don't think Henderson will redshirt. I think that he's too good offensively. I don't think he's going to play a lot, but I think you could see 8 to 10 minutes a game to start getting him those development minutes on a team that should be, again, solid this year. So look for him to kind of break into that rotation. Ty Perkins, who is a incoming 6-foot guard, is also from Westerville, Ohio. He had just one offer that was from Akron, but don't let that overshadow, because I actually think his natural talent is significantly higher. He should have had more offers than he did from just Akron here. He dropped 35 points in Westerville North's regional final victory. He dropped 32 points on 8 three-pointers. Again, I'll link some of his highlights down. Both these guys, I couldn't find much in terms of like YouTube videos that I can link out to everybody. So these are huddle videos, which is totally fine. But you know how huddle goes. Sometimes it's more of just showing their best performances overall. But what I enjoy about watching him, from what I've seen from the footage, is the fact of how quick he is. He's going to play. Again, I don't know if he's. I could see him redshirting this season, but he fits into that traditional guard role that Groce tends to go for here. Somebody who's really quick, he can score, he's a slasher, he can shoot from beyond the arc. I think over time he'll take a nice role with the team, but I think given that they have Shaman Scott, they have Tavari Johnson, Sharron Young, and they have some other guys here that are going to be able to play more of that traditional point guard, combo guard role, I don't see Perkins not redshirting this season. If he doesn't redshirt, he's not going to have much playing time as a freshman. So a couple months ago, I actually put out a roster review, a little bit of a deep dive into the Akron Zips on our newsletter at bracketbusterhoops.com, which I, by the way, recommend that you subscribe to. We send out weekly newsletters every single week regarding, during the offseason, we're doing roster reviews. During the regular season, we're going to be doing rising fallers, that kind of thing. Regardless, though, at the time, the only incoming freshmen were Henderson and Perkins. So they actually got a last-minute addition who's coming in, and please bear with me when I try to pronounce his name. I could not find how to pronounce this. We have Ogden Stankovic. Honestly, I don't think that was too bad. Anyway, he's a 6'6 guard forward coming out of Serbia. Really totally under the radar, but you're seeing mid-major teams kind of go after this international talent because the portal was taking away players, so they're getting a little bit more creative here. And with the addition of NIL money, it's allowing people to have opportunities to come over to the States and kind of, instead of necessarily just staying in the Euro ranks and playing professionally up there. I'm going to read you off a couple stats from his FIBA performances over the years. 2021, he averaged, in 5 games, he averaged 13.8 points, 8.4 rebounds, 3.2 assists per game. Recently, he appeared in the FIBA Under-20 Eurobasket last year, so not 2025, 2024's. In 7 games, he averaged 6.1 points, 2.7 rebounds, and 2.9 assists per game. So he played most recently, though, in this year, he played in the club competition for the Basketball Champions League, and he appeared in 5 games. He averaged 1.6 points, 1.2 rebounds, 1 assist per game. So I think what's most important to note here is, even though his metrics as he got older maybe aren't keeping up from what we potentially saw from when he was earlier on, because those initial numbers that I read from the 2021 was FIBA under 16. So he was very clearly a talented player from the beginning. But, we saw he kind of matured and maybe he didn't get into those types. We don't know. I don't keep up necessarily with every single year because, first of all, there's just way too much to try to keep up with it, and there's plenty of great content creators that do that. My point, though, is if you look at the potential and you watch some of the footage from him, very solid player overall, and I think he's going to be highly underrated for Akron. I think he's a redshirt candidate, number one. He's just coming over to the States for the first time this year, and I think that if you redshirt him, let him develop in your system, and then start giving him a role next year as a redshirt freshman, I think he's great long-term potential. Because then all of a sudden you got him and Perkins, and if you redshirt both of them, that's two really solid players coming off the redshirt year going into next season when your roster is already loaded this year, and both those players probably aren't getting too much time. So I would highly recommend that he does redshirt. Obviously, we're not going to know fully yet here. But yeah, do keep an eye on him. I think he's the type of guy that is a true diamond in the rough that nobody heard of, including myself, coming into the season, that you could, over the course of the next 3 to 4 years, become a little bit more of a common household name. Okay, so there's a lot to like overall about the structure of this team, even with somebody like Nate Johnson leaving. You have Tavari Johnson coming back. You have Shama Scott coming back. You have Sharron Young and Amani Miles. You have the core of a really solid team coming into this year, and John Groce added some additional talent coming in from both the freshmen and transfer portal itself. So on paper, I think that this team could be and should be at the top of the MAC once again. There's a lot of good teams in the MAC this year. You got Miami, Ohio, who's criminally underrated. You got Akron, who's going to be criminally underrated. And Ohio's got another really good team. So you have 3 teams right there that I think are going to kind of be in the top 3, top 4 teams. But I do think Akron is going to be right there once again, because again, Groce has turned this into a powerhouse of a mid-major program. If I were to take a stab at what I think a starting lineup could look like on opening day, I would say obviously Tavari Johnson is a complete lock. You have Shama Scott and Sharron Young, who both could play in that shooting guard position. I think Scott's going to edge him out a little bit there because Sharron Young he's coming into sophomore season, and he kind of gives that spark plug. And when Johnson's not playing, and Groce likes to play a little bit of a deeper in terms of like some guys might only play 18, 20 minutes a game. So Young's going to get plenty of playing time. It just might be coming off the bench, but I don't think you can go wrong with either of those. I would also suggest Evan Mahaffey, who's coming in again from Ohio State. He's got real important experience. He started in 35 games for the Buckeyes just 2 seasons ago. I think he provides a really good small forward position. You have Amani Lyles, who is a lock in my opinion. You got Chavi Barre, who I think should be starting in the lineup as well. So it's really 5 to 6 guys right there who could be all in that starting lineup. And I think it's really interesting because I highlighted this a couple times throughout this video, but the Zips are going to be running without a lot of height depth. Lyles is 6'7", Barre is 6'9", and Briscoe 6'8", and that's pretty much about it for the tallest players on the team. So we're going to be seeing predominantly a small ball lineup, and which is totally fine. It fits the typical mold. Groce likes to play fast. He likes to play quick offensive. He's very up-tempo, and he's always played small ball, so I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with this. So if you're thinking about the starting lineup that I just pitched here, obviously no doubt Tavari Johnson's going to be starting, and then again I kind of highlighted you could play Scott or Young. I don't foresee either one, both are very good players. I would lean towards Scott because he's got that veteran experience, and you can bring Young in when Johnson's not in the lineup, and Young can run the offense, and I think that's what's going to be really important there. Looking at the rest of the lineup though, it could still kind of be up in the air a little bit. From the height perspective, the reason I put Lyles and Barre in there is because I just highlighted that, as well as the fact that they don't have a lot of depth with height. So if you wanted to take one of them out, move them back to the bench alongside Briscoe, you could slide somebody in like Musme Kamali, who's 6'6". You could team up with Mahaffey. It would just be a really, really small lineup. I don't know if I love that idea. He is a defensive-minded guard, so he can kind of fill in that void when you do have people, again, like Scott and Johnson, who are obviously very terrifically offensively talented. It could be an interesting kind of 1-2 punch there if you did put in Mahaffey and Kamali. We'll just kind of see what happens at that point. Looking at the bench, so again, I highlighted you probably either have Young or Scott in that lineup, so you're going to have one of those two, vice versa, kind of being the first go-to person coming off. You're going to have Cody Head, Malin Hardman, and Richard Briscoe. You need Briscoe because despite his lack of collegiate experience, you need his height. Cody Head and Hardman are going to probably team up for that guard position. Head obviously can provide some strong offensive capabilities and strong defensive capabilities as well. And then you're going to have Hardman, who is a 3-point specialist. Again, I wouldn't start him. I wouldn't start him purely because he is going to be that spark coming off the bench, kind of doing the same exact role he did last year. And I don't foresee that changing too much there. And then again, you're going to have Young or Scott coming off. would recommend Young, but he's going to be able to be your floor general. He's going to be able to team up with somebody like Hardman and Head. So you can imagine that literally in your secondary unit, you have Young, Head, and Hardman. That is an outstanding 3-guard, pretty much an entirely. I mean, that's a team that would be a starting lineup on many other teams. Very solid depth here from the guard position overall. Again, you like the height, but that's okay. That doesn't fit. The height doesn't fit into the mold of what this team is meant to be doing. So they're going to be running teams into the ground with the talented guards because, again, this is a team that the secondary unit's a team that could be starting on another one. And then plus 2, you got people like Kamali, who's 6'6" and kind of fits more towards the small forward role, not necessarily a guard. It's going to be able to come off and provide very strong on-ball defense. You name it, like just a very talented roster overall. I've highlighted it a couple times throughout this video, but overall, this team is going to be running very quickly. Last season, they averaged 84 points per game. That was 8th in the country. They scored 100 points 5 times. So I think we're going to be seeing the same exact thing last year, because last year they averaged opponents 75.1 points per game. Very much an offensive first team. I think they actually ticked up a little bit in terms of the defensive end, in terms of the paint. So you could see that number drop down a little bit here. But there's not a doubt in my mind that this is going to be just an offensively prolific team once again here. They did have some talented defenders that they did lose. They lost Johnson and Gray, so you could see that drop a little bit, contrary to what I just said. But I do think overall, where they lost on guard defenders, they picked up additional kind of larger size for the Akron Zips players who can kind of play in the paint. So I do think that's going to be, I think there's plenty of defensive talent that's still going to be there. But if you would have to pick something that I would think might hurt them a little bit, I do think it's going to be the defensive end, but that just fits into the mold. I don't think that's necessarily a huge deal whatsoever here. Overall, I think this team's going to win 25 plus games again. At the very least, 22 to like 24. I just don't foresee how they don't win a bunch of games once again, because they're just offensively so good. Even if they give up 90 points a game, they could win because they're going to drop 102 points per game. So that's going to be the type of games that we're going to be seeing this year. And the Zips is going to once again be a blast to watch this year. All right, guys, as we wrap this up, I just want to thank you once again for tuning into another video of the Bracket Busters roster review series that we've been doing here. If you are not subscribed already, subscribe to our newsletter. It's on Substack. It's at bracketbusterhoops.com. We're sending out weekly newsletters right now. We're doing the roster reviews, as I mentioned earlier. We're going to be diving more into, once the season starts, kind of doing risers, fallers, tracking everything in terms of non-power conference schools. If you haven't yet, do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're starting to spin up a bunch of content here. I'm really excited about some of the stuff that I'm thinking about doing throughout the season. So love your support, and just can't wait to tune in the next time.